we talked about the extent of the Pashtun Empire originally. Peshawar was the winter capital, now no longer part of Pashtunistan. But the jockeying between the Pashtuns, the tribal areas, and the Pakistan government is an indicator of the strength of this Pashtun independence and the problems of ruling it. And we're dealing with the other side of that same problem. And so the problems in the northwest provinces of Pakistan didn't rise up out of the problems in Afghanistan. They were there. It's just that now there is compelling need for the Pashtuns to stand up before they are culturally obliterated by the arising of a foreign Afghan state. Back to 2001, the Taliban, as the political outgrowth of Pashtun society, was ruling Afghanistan. And they were fighting their own counterinsurgency against the Northern Alliance, who were a bunch of ethnic minorities, Uzbeks and Tajiks and others in the northern part of Afghanistan. We came in on the side of the Northern Alliance, ejected this government from their country, from their traditional country, and put our own government in charge. And so a government which represents an urban elite of Pashtuns, not really linked culturally very, very strongly to their people, and a bunch of ethnic minorities. To some extent, the Pashtuns are fighting for their traditional state and their traditional prerogatives, and fighting against a culture which is entirely foreign to them. So both these states are attempting to extend their coercive authority across this territory. And the Kajaki Dam example was intended to highlight the extent to which they are and we're not. The Minds approach, which is the collective wisdom of how we should approach counterinsurgency, is predicated on the proposition that we, foreign, Western, culturally Christian, whether we practice Christianity or not, invaders can convince a sizable proportion of the Pashtun population to unbe, to stop being Pashtuns, and embrace a way of life which we are telling them is good. They should subject themselves to an equally foreign and incomprehensible form of government, resting largely on the customs of pre-Roman German tribes, and abandon their cultural birthright of unrivaled hegemony over Pashtunistan. Our inducements for them to give away their existence are some new buildings, better education, better electricity, and some cash. None of which have been terribly important to them so far in their history. And so we're offering them the opportunity to be like us. Those of you who read Occidentalism, The West and the Eyes of Its Enemy by Burama and Najalip, their argument is that the whole jihadi view, and they call it Islamofascism, is actually the affront that westernisation causes to these quite fundamental people. And so modernisation is westernisation. Westernisation is the source of Islamic resistance. And so our attempts to be nice, our attempts to pass over largesse, to educate women, to have parliamentary democracy, are actually the source of the war that we're trying to solve with them. And so it's quite possible that we are simply throwing logs on the fire rather than dousing it. The same thing about the congruence between westernisation and modernisation, and the likelihood that will cause people to fight, was the basic argument inside Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations. So the evidence being offered today is that the bargain we're offering is being rejected in those areas where there's an insurgency. So the Uzbeks and Tajiks and all those guys up in the north, who, if the Pashtuns were in charge, would be subject races, have embraced the new model wholeheartedly because it provides a shield for them against Pashtun domination. However, the heart, soul and source of the insurgency is rejecting it. And so our model is not delivering the goods that we want it to. So my first point is that the hearts and minds approach is not good strategy because I don't think it can work. It can't deliver the outcome we're seeking from it. But there's more, folks. It's bad strategy for other reasons as well. There are two broad strategies which I'll call annihilation and exhaustion. And I need to explain annihilation a little before I get too far into it. It sounds like rivers of blood, which is not intended to be. they're the two kind of poles of a continuum, and all wars have elements of both. But a strategy of annihilation says we are going to destroy the ability to fight of the enemy. A strategy of exhaustion says we're going to destroy their ability to, their willingness to fight. We're going to exhaust their will to fight. And so in one, we go out, we try and find the enemy's armed forces and his sources of power and destroy them. In the other, we try and avoid being defeated. So long that the other side says, this is just not worth the effort, let's cut a deal. Exhaustion is the classic strategy of the weak, and is the classic strategy of insurgents. And you think of Hamas, Hezbollah, almost all insurgent movements try and deny victory to the counterinsurgent until they lose heart and give the political concessions that they're seeking to make. The hearts and minds approach that we're attempting to follow in Afghanistan is a strategy of exhaustion, in that where we think that by building buildings and building roads and distributing electricity and providing schooling opportunities, that we will convince the Pashtuns that it's not worth continuing to fight. It seems to me that's unlikely, but more importantly, we play to our own weakness. There is a real sense that the West is easily exhausted, that we live in an age of instant gratification. For those of you who don't get the chance to watch The Simpsons every night, there's a classic episode, they're all classic, but this one in particular, where Homer is looking at a huge deep fryer, and the sales pitch is, this deep fryer can fry a whole buffalo in 45 seconds. And Homer says, 45 seconds, but I want it now. And that need for instant gratification does not tie in to us prosecuting a strategy of exhaustion. New York Times and Quagmire, the Q word. If you don't get progress every day in real and measurable ways, you are in a quagmire. The fact that you'll have reverses, good days, bad days, is completely lost. Unless you're showing steady, Western-style business progress against a set of metrics, you're going nowhere. The classic saying in the West is, if you're not winning, you are losing. And I think that's very true. So what we're doing here is we're saying we're going to out-exhaust you. Complete symmetry. We call it asymmetric war. It's not. It's completely symmetrical war. They're trying to exhaust us and we're trying to exhaust them. On the balance, I think they're more likely to exhaust us than vice versa. And in fact, Mullah Omar is quoted as saying, the Americans have all the watches, but we have all the time. Now, if the stakes on the table are sufficiently compelling and strong, then the West has shown it can endure enormous hardships over a very long time. My question would be, given the polling in papers, in our own papers recently, given the decline in the relevance and importance and danger posed by Al-Qaeda, what other irons do we have in the fire in Afghanistan? And how long are we willing to stay there? And how long until some of the NATO partners start to lose interest and go home? Given that the removal of any coalition partner is a major victory to the insurgent, or the Pashtunistans, if they're not insurgents. Al-Qaeda is mostly in Pakistan at the moment, and really, I think the Taliban were hosting Al-Qaeda rather than working in cahoots with Al-Qaeda, and I think the Taliban are dealing with Afghan issues, not global jihad. So how much do we care about their treatment of women? How much do we care about those silly stone Buddhas? How many people are we willing to have killed for them? And these are the issues which we're going to have to answer to ourselves over probably the next few months.